JJ, as far as Ligue 1 is concerned, the headline from over there is perhaps the most unappetizing of headlines from any of the major leagues in Europe this week, and that was the unprecedented scenes of the Nice team being attacked by their own fans. Now, you've talked to us a lot over the years about the problems at Nice. That backdrop might be important in the context because, to be frank, I, and I'm sure many followers of European football, are gobsmacked at what happened in Nice. How did we get to where we are? Perhaps you start off by telling us what actually happened.
Yeah, so this is obviously an extremely dark episode for Nice in their modern history, certainly one of the darkest days of Ineos's ownership of the club, and I think we'll get to that very shortly. But essentially for fans who have only seen that there was essentially some commotion around Nice involving the fans and players, to put it extremely lightly, basically ultras attacked the Nice players and staff after a humiliating 3-1 loss to Lorient. So Terem Moffi, Jeremy Boga and Florian Maurice, the sporting director, were targeted physically. Now, Moffi and Boga are now off on leave, possibly never to play for the club again. Franck Hez, the head coach, is now speculating to be considering resigning from his position, having already offered his resignation in recent weeks because of the team's bad form and inability to essentially operate as a unit. Jean-Claude Blanc has been drafted in by Ineos to restore some order, given the how the situation has deteriorated recently. And it's been a bit of an awkward return to work after the players were given 2 days off post that loss against Lorient. Maurice was back at work and is now presumably dealing with the players who are understandably considering their futures. So this is all off the back of some very humiliating defeats. There was the heavy loss at home to Marseille, which happened to be on the Ultras' anniversary as well. There was the loss to Porto in Europe with a goal conceded within 20 seconds. There was a brilliant fan commentator reaction to them conceding that early goal. But it goes deeper than that, really. So to establish why this is such an unhappy fan base, I think we have to wind the clock back a while now. So Ineos had constantly been eyeing up involvement in a Premier League club for some time until they landed on United. And what was once an ambitious project on the Riviera has repeatedly been scaled back. You've got not only the difficult situation with regards to Ineos's ownership, you've also had the French TV money situation, which we've gone into extensive detail about as well. But Ratcliffe has made it clear in no uncertain terms that he doesn't really care for Nice. He doesn't enjoy watching them, which is a very odd stance when you're publicly trying to sell the club as well. Everybody knows that the club is on the market and available should there be a suitable offer. Now, there's perceived lack of effort and seriousness from certain players, notably Boga and Moffi, but also there's feelings within the Nice fan base that Maurice is not living up to his reputation, given some of the stunning work that he's done in the past for the likes of Lyon, for the likes of Rennes as well. And the transfer dealings have really fallen short. Now, Franck Hez was spared any real criticism because of last season's miraculous European qualification. But he has recently repeatedly tried to resign or extricate himself from what's been a very difficult situation. And I think there's also a general disconnect which also needs to be considered, because since moving to the Allianz Riviera from the atmospheric Stade du Ré, I think that better suited Nice, and Nice's fan base have felt like they're playing in a stadium that wasn't really ever made with them in mind. It was made with Euro 2016 in mind. And I think when you look and watch a Nice game, you feel like there aren't as many fans there. There's not this kind of fervor that you would expect, from such a Mediterranean destination. So all of this has combined and created this pressure cooker, which unfortunately exploded in very similar circumstances, as Andy mentioned before we started recording the podcast, to what happened at Sporting in Portugal a couple of years ago.
Indeed. Just remind us about that. What happened in Sporting? How similar is this situation to that?
It's not at all dissimilar, I think. And I think, so bear in mind, this was when Sporting failed to get into the Champions League. they were attacked. The players were attacked by ultras at their Alcochete training ground, and a load of the players unilaterally cancelled their contracts. So you had Rui Patricio, Bruno Fernandes, though he recanted that afterwards and signed a new contract on the same terms as his old one. William Carvalho, Rafael Leao, which was a saga that lasted for literally years. But I just wonder, JJ, if we could see a similar situation at Nice, because you've got players like Terry Moffi and Jeremy Boga, as you say, who won't play this weekend, who are signed off sick, essentially. Jonathan Klaus has also made a criminal complaint for some of the physical abuse that he received last weekend. And I wonder if these players could do the same, if they could decide to basically try and walk away unilaterally.
I think they will. I think there's a number of players who will be trying to do that actively at this moment, and I think that Maurice and Ez, have some big decisions to make over the next couple of days. Let's not rule out at this moment in time that Francaise might not be coach going into that game. He may well have resigned. It's ultimately a question right now of whether he decides to walk away from, multiple millions of euros in compensation, or whether the club has to take the decision to look to come to a mutual agreement to avoid paying the high price of having to sack him, which I don't think would be deserved given the miracle of last season and qualifying for the Champions League, even if they crashed out after those 2 qualifying round games to Benfica. So I definitely think there's a number of players in this Nice squad at the moment who are extremely unhappy and looking to get out. On the topic of Jonathan Klaus, he was expecting to leave over the summer. Ultimately, that transfer didn't come through. There's been very public struggles for him to get back focused on the task in hand with Nice. Obviously, that's been complicated hugely by the fact that there's been a number of high-profile players, notably in defence, who have suffered injuries, which has weakened the squad available to Francaise. But they've become a laughingstock because of their poor performances in Europe over the last couple of years. And ultimately, I think it's become a very demoralising experience playing for Nice. And I think a lot of this stems from the fact that there's just such disinterest from the top of the club, from the Ineos ownership. It's you look at Ratcliffe's comments saying how he doesn't enjoy watching Nice play. It's not exciting. It's never been enjoyable for him. And I think, what kind of message does that send out to the club leadership, who have already had to try to, put a brave face on the fact that the formerly ambitious objectives that they had set when it looked like Ineos was still prepared to be invested in the project have had to be walked back multiple times. It just seems like a club that, people, whether it's at the very top of the club or in the staff or in the, amongst the players, have just lost interest and lost belief, really, that ultimately they can be competitive and try to seek to achieve some of those lofty objectives that were set a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of put them in this completely invidious position, really, the people who are at the club. Now, we know Hayes is a more than capable coach. He did a brilliant job at Lens. He's one of the better coaches in the league. Florian Maurice is... JJ was saying, has got a track record in recruitment that speaks for itself. But I think it does all come down to Ineos and the sort of atmosphere they create. And going back to what Jim Ratcliffe did, there's sort of... There are words that he should regret or continue to regret, because really it's created this atmosphere at the club where you've got a lot of relics on the playing staff from when they were really ambitious. But they're assets that really, it's terrible business. Ratcliffe is completely devaluing the club and devaluing those players. If he wants to move on from those players, I look at that front three of Boga, Moffi, and Mohamed Ali Cho. If you look at it on paper, it's way better than Lyon have got, for example, isn't it, at the moment? And you look at the fact that Lyon are top of the Europa League and Nice are bottom. And that says everything you need to know about the culture of the club.
The comments that were made by Jim Ratcliffe about Nice Remind me, you two are probably too young to remember the comments by Gerald Ratner, who used to run.
That's exactly who I was thinking
so
of.
You're not that young then.
No, I'm not. and that was exactly what I'm thinking of. Just rubbishing your own product.
Yeah,
and if you want it to have value for you to sell, it's unbelievable. I can never understand why football club owners, when they want to sell a club, you know something about business, keep your cards close to your chest. Don't devalue the asset.
At the time, Ratner's was one of the most successful jewellery chains in Britain, and the chairman said that the jewellery was rubbish, but he used fruitier language, Andy.
Well, he said crap, it wasn't that bad.
Well,
he shouldn't have said it.
It destroyed the company.
Look,
I
think the fact is, look, we can't for a moment excuse the behaviour of the ultras, which bizarrely was denied by the mayor of Nice. Now, he's up for election in the very near future, and presumably he's thinking some of these blokes who've had a go at the players could vote for me, so I don't want to disenfranchise them. It's like awful, awful political chicanery. Whatever's happened on the pitch, we cannot excuse what has happened to those players. It's dreadful. But I don't think it's a stretch, JJ, to say that the general unhappiness at the club has been building over a period of time, and that is squarely on the ownership.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in many ways, and I'm not seeking to glorify or praise the behavior of the ultras in any way, but I think it does still show, it's a reminder that people do still care about the club. There are people who are living this humiliation day to day, week after week, and this feeling that they're supporting a club that is not a major consideration for Ineos and for Ratcliffe. It's a nuisance, that it's a stone in his shoe that he wants to be rid of as quickly as possible. Now, in terms of what the best case scenario might look like, it's really tricky and difficult to predict what it might be at this moment in time, because we don't know ultimately the extent of the damage that's going to have been done, how many players ultimately who will never play for the club again, what this does to the makeup of the staff, whether Francaise will continue or not, because like Andy said, it's one of the better coaches in Ligue 1 at this moment in time. Also, does this compromise Maurice's position ahead of what could be a crucial winter transfer window in January as well? So there's a lot of questions that will need to be answered in the next couple of weeks. But ultimately, the thing that does have to happen, and it's something that's been in the works for the last couple of months, how long it takes to come to fruition, we'll have to wait and see. But Ineos ultimately do have to move on from their ownership of Nice. I think that's extremely clear. And I think the sooner that they are shot of Nice, the better, not only for them, but also for the club and for the fans, so that they can look at themselves in the mirror and take themselves seriously once again, because they feel disrespected to that point at this moment in time. And like I said, and I stress, I'm not sticking up for the behavior of the ultras in any way or trying to justify what they did. They crossed a line, and they will ultimately have to suffer the consequences of that. You look at the outcry from within France so far. The LFP, the UNFP, which is the Union for Professional Footballers, have come out in strong defense of Nice and the players and the staff because of the treatment that they've been subjected to. But people forget that this is a club that a lot of fans truly care about. This is, their livelihood. And I go back to the example of the fan commentator after the 20-second goal against Porto, to see the level of frustration that built up in him. It's a brilliant clip if you go and look it up. It really captured in a nutshell just how frustrated these Nice fans have become over the last couple of years.
Yeah, maybe the right way to put it is the sooner Nice is shot of Ineos, the better.